Hello everyone, welcome to RCD ShareNet. I'm Ella Huang. Today I will be talking about accessible parking permit for people with disabilities. So here is the agenda. We will look at slide 1. The content will include what is accessible parking permit, our acronym is APP. How do we use it? How many types of APP are there? How to apply and renew, as well as some frequently asked questions. I hope after today's session you will understand a bit better about accessible parking permit, APP. So what is APP, accessible parking permit? Sometimes you may say, accessible parking permit, I've never heard of that term before. However, the more I wouldn't say commonly used, the previously used terms might be disabled parking permit, handicap permit, handicap placard, permit for handicapped people. Because of using the first people language, we want to give the awareness to the general public that we want to address people with disabilities starting with people first. So we're not generalize the people with disabilities or stereotype them. So the same application for accessible parking permit for people with disabilities. So we don't use the terms like disabled or handicapped. The proper term we use is accessible parking permit, APP. So how do we use the APP and what is APP? The only usage of accessible parking permit is to allow the permit holder to park at a designated spot which is reserved for people with disabilities. And how do we define that is if the person has already been given the designation, a person with disabilities, through the healthcare professional, they applied for the accessible parking permit, and when using the accessible parking permit, they are entitled to park at the designated spots. So it is very simple. And of course, there are a lot of other, confusion over the parking permit. Is where do we apply for it, and who's overseeing this process? In fact, in Canada, the accessible parking policy and the program for persons with disabilities, they come under the provincial or territorial government authority. So this government, they then delegate the responsibility to enacting and enforcing the program and on their own bylaws on accessible parking permits through the municipality, through the cities. So a lot of the times they are actually regulated and overseen by the bylaw office in each individual cities. And as a result, there may be different policy based on the bylaws of the city. But saying all that, the city normally they don't issue the parking permit. They actually will pass the responsibility on to a nonprofit or some community agencies to operate the program. So, like for instance, the Richmond Center for Disability, RCD, is one of the agencies, that we are authorized by the city of Richmond to operate the APP, the program for people with disabilities in Richmond. So we can look at the next slide 2, to see how many types of permits we have. So you can see here that they're of different colors as well. So the navy blue one is actually the permanent permit. And the permanent permit, they do have a little bit more information on that. You can see that they have more years. And then look at the permit, you can see that we actually have, if the permit is used, you can see that they're hole punched, and then to indicate the expiration date of the permit. So they punch, say, if 2024 October, that means at the end of that month, this permit is no longer valid. And for a permanent one, it's good for 3 years and then has to be renewed. The other type is a temporary one. Sometimes people may have a condition that requires to have a parking permit, but that is a short term. Say, for instance, like someone may have a leg injury or hip replacement, and then they cannot walk for a long distance, so they may apply for APP, and that is a temporary one. So temporary for our office and for some other issuing bodies, they have different color. So every year has a different color. Once looking at the year, we know, or the color, we know that what year it is applicable in. And then you can see that the number of years they indicate is shorter. And then because the maximum time for the temporary permit is 1 year. So it ranges from 1 month to 1 year. Depending, this is decided by the doctor. The doctor will indicate, this medical condition requires to have the permit for 3 months. And then the doctor will give for 3 months. Then we will issue one accordingly. And then also we have visitor's permit. So what is visitor's permit? So we have a person with disabilities, they're traveling from a foreign country to Canada. And as long as they can provide a valid accessible parking permit from their own country, and they not necessarily have a doctor here, so with that they can apply for a visitor's permit, which is to the maximum of 1 month, and they can apply for. So with that is they must have a valid parking permit from their own country. Then we talk about how do we apply. So we can look at the next slide, slide 3, looking at the application form. So basically, the application form here is, we look at that is the applicant information is the personal information of the applicant, and then the physician's assessment. So this is important to note that the main thing is the physician's certification. And the physician has to be a healthcare professional, a doctor who's registered in the province of BC in order to sign that, because we do need the MSP number of the doctor. And also the reason for certifying the accessible parking permit for this applicant. So basically on the form, we would say that need the extra width of designated space to get in and out of the vehicle in a wheelchair. So this is for people with mobility challenges or using crutches, a cane, or other mobility aids such as walkers. And need to park close to the building entrance because their health prevents them from walking very far. So this is a little bit maybe some ambiguity in this. So it is not strictly for people with physical limitations, say for instance who are legally blind, or with who are totally blind. That would be unsafe for the individual to to walk a long distance from the vehicle to the front entrance of the destination. So it will benefit them to park at a closer location to the front entrance, and then they can apply for the parking permit as well. Now, after applying for that, say for instance you get a permanent permit. And then remember I mentioned that you need to renew it every 3 years. So if it is certified by the doctor that it is a permanent condition, that to have the permanent permit, when we send out the renewal, so we can look at the renewal form. A lot of information we have already have on our database, so you don't need to fill that out, and you don't need to have the certification of the doctor again. So using the renewal form, you can if there is any changes, say with the address or with the change of doctor or any other thing, then you just put the new information in, and then we will renew it. How about for the temporary one? So for the temporary, since it is for a temporary condition, and then the maximum time is for 1 year, if the doctor deemed the applicant necessary to have longer time to use the parking permit, then they need to have a new application form. So we will not send out renewal form for the temporary permit, only for the permanent permit. And that is one more reason is sometimes people, they may forget to let us know that they have moved, or there's some changes with their medical condition or any other situation. So renewing every 3 years enable us to keep a more current information of the applicant. So recently, when you apply for the parking permit from the Richmond Center for Disability, we also send out the wallet card. So we can look at the next slide for the wallet card. So wallet card, it looks like this, and on the back, this one is blank. However, you will have your information on the back of the wallet card with the names, the user number, and the issuance, agency. So it is, if you're being checked for, the validity of your permit, that is the ID that you can produce. And also it gives direct link to, we have a QR code on the back, then when they scan it, they can contact our agency directly for more up-to-date information. And other than that, sometimes, we have also people asking us for this notice. I don't know, you also can see that. This notice is, we will give that out if you ask for it, is when you see other people, they may not have the permit and they parked at a designated spot, or they with the permit, but they're not really, that they're abusing the privilege. So that might be something that you want to let them know. So we always say that, do not confront these people because it may not be safe. You don't know what the situation is like. But under safe circumstances, you want to let them know that perhaps they should not park at the designated spot without a valid permit. Then you can put one of these on their dash. And we have this at our office that you can ask for when you come to our office to visit us. Okay, so that pretty much concludes the application. Other than that, with the usage of the parking permit, earlier I mentioned it's quite simple. You use it to park at the designated spots. But there's still a lot of questions, sometimes people would want to know. So I have a few frequently asked questions I would like to share with you. So one question is, can I sit in the car in the designated accessible parking space with my permit visible while my family or friends go in the building for me? Maybe to pick up something, to pick up medication, to buy some groceries while I wait in the car. So the answer is no. If you are the permit holder and you're not going into the destination, you're sitting in the car, you don't really need to park at an accessible spot which is closer to the entrance. So a parking permit, literally as it means, is you park your car there and you leave. So that is a parking permit. It's not for you to sit in. And another frequently asked question is, some people say, I have 2 cars. Can I have 2 permits? The answer again is no, because the parking permit actually follows the person, the permit holder, not the car. So even someone who has no vehicle can still apply for a parking permit because, the friend or family members can pick them up, they can use it. And then, so of course, while the permit holder is in the car, and then one of the passengers of the car, and then they can park the car and go into to the destination. So it follows the person, not the vehicle. So this is important to notice that. And also, other question is, can I use my parking permit in an area signed as no parking or no stopping? I'm afraid not, because even with the parking permit, you need to follow all the traffic regulations. It doesn't give you any privilege to violate the traffic regulations. And the other very common one is, do I need to pay parking fee? Oh, that's just a very interesting one. A lot of people think they have the permit that they can park at any place free, no need to pay. So I can tell you in Richmond, there's no exemption. You need to pay regardless. At the city's parking meter, at the city's owned or operated parking lot, at the private parking lots, so you all need to pay. There is no exemption for that. But in some cities, they may have given some exemption for people with disabilities with the parking permit. They may waive their parking fee. So you need to check out at different city. But in city of Richmond, I can tell you there's no such exemption. And also the other main thing is the private parking lot. Normally, if it is not under the bylaw, the city's bylaw regulations, you have to pay anyway. A lot of people may misunderstand that, and then they park at a in-park or other private parking lot, and if they don't pay, and they might get a ticket for that. And some people may ask, can I let my family members who are elderly and with difficulties in walking to use the permit? I'm afraid not. So the permit follows the person. It is not for any person with disabilities. So it's only for the permit holder. Even there was another person with exactly the same condition may warrant to use a parking permit for people with disabilities. So the person needs to go to his or her doctor to get the certification to get his or her own parking permits. I forgot to display my parking permit and got a ticket. Do I need to pay? So just like earlier, if that is the case, if you have not displayed it, even you have one in your pocket or in your glove compartment in the car, it's not seen, and you get a ticket for that, you need to pay that. Another interesting question is, we observe that people always leave their parking permits on the windshield or on the hanger while they're driving, and in fact that is not a good suggestion because it may effectively block the driver's view. So we would suggest is the parking permit is only used while the car has parked. So while you're driving, you don't have it out. It is only useful when you park your car at the designated spot. Can I get a replacement if my permit is lost and stolen? Yes. Sometimes that happens, accident happens. If it's stolen, you might want to report it to the police so that it is on record. If it is kind of misplaced, sometimes that happens as well. So we can reissue that. But remember, you need to make a declaration that your permit cannot be found or has been stolen, or you have lost it. So you have to make a declaration of that so that you're not in possession of two permits at the same time. So you're only allowed to have one. And then also when we reissue, we charge the same processing fee. The main thing is also it will give you exactly the same expiration. If you have only 1 month to go, then when you come in for a replacement, the replacement will only give you 1 month. And the other question is frequently asked is, can I use my parking permit outside of BC? Yes, it is valid throughout Canada. So you can use it in any province or territories. How about in another country? Now it depends. So this is a bit tricky, especially in Richmond. We're so close to the border, and people would just go to the States and then they will, leave their car there and then park at the designated spot. So it is valid. Saying that is a bit funny to observe that, in fact, Canada is in a mutual agreement called the Mutual Recognition of Parking Permits for Persons with Disabilities. And then this mutual agreement is signed with the ECMT, so it is with the European Conference of Ministers of Transport. So if we go to Europe, and then they're in this conference, and then within this agreement, you can actually use the parking permit for people with disabilities from Canada in those European countries. And then all the ECMT associated countries as well, so they're not located in Europe, but they're in the rest of the world. And then if they have signed up with this agreement, that include Australia, Japan, Korea, New Zealand, and United States. And of course, Canada is one of the associated countries. So if you travel to these countries, you can actually use your parking permit. However, saying that is, this may not be kind of fully understood by the bylaw officer, depending on the systems in their country. So it is always worthwhile to display the permit and then also have the indication with the wallet card saying that you have a valid permit, and then maybe find out a little bit more about this mutual agreement so that you can prove to the officers when you are questioned. Well, that's a lot of information. I hope it is useful for you, for applying and using the accessible parking permit for people with disabilities, as well as traveling aboard with that. I have also left some links in the website information, in the description underneath, and feel free to browse them when you have time. Thank you for now, and you have a good day.